Hello and welcome to our latest Seawork Insights online conference, looking at how the commercial workboat sector can contribute to defence as an engine for growth. I'm Debbie Mason, Maritime Journal editor. The commercial workboat sector plays a vital role in delivering the Defence Industrial Strategy 2025 by providing versatile, cost-effective maritime solutions that strengthen defence capability, economic growth and national resilience. The workboat sector supports activities from logistics and training to port operations and maritime security, enabling military assets to focus on core missions while advancing Ministry of Defence priorities through the integration of autonomous systems, advanced sensors, and sustainable propulsion. Today, we're going to listen to three speakers, so please put any questions you may have to them in the chat box at the side, and we'll try and get to them after their presentations. So, first of all, let's kick off with Dr. Mark Helliker, who's worked for more than 25 years in defence research in areas including operational analysis and scientific support to operations and engineering. Mark has a passion for research in both military and police body armour, having been deployed in operations as part of the scientific advisory team to Iraq, Afghanistan, and more recently the UK during the COVID outbreak. He's now the DSA Innovation Partner for the South East, supporting innovators in the defence and security sectors. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Could I have my slides, please? Thank you very much. Oh, hang on, we're right at the end of the pack. Hang on, there we go. So I'm Mark. I'm the DASA Innovation Partner for the South East of England. I'm one of the team for outreach. So our role is to be that first point of contact for anyone who's interested in submitting a proposal into UKDI. I should say that the brand name of DASA, which some of you may be familiar with, is going to disappear in the next few weeks. We are now UKDI. So if I just... So UKDI is an amalgamation of what was Future Capability Innovation, which was part of the ENS, the Defence Security Accelerator and the Defence Innovation Unit into a single unified organisation. So we're currently undergoing a restructuring, and with that, a lot of our offerings are currently being reviewed and are being updated to meet the needs of the Strategic Defence Review, Defence Industrial Strategy, etc. So a lot of what I'm presenting at the moment is this is what we're currently doing, but our scope is expanding as of July as we reach full operating capability. So it's really going to be a case of just keep an eye out what's happening, what's changing, and see where you might be able to fit in support and receive funding potentially against one of our challenges or competitions. So our mission is to find and fund exploitable innovation and support of UK defence and security quickly, effectively, and support UK prosperity. So we run a series of challenges which are aimed at developing technologies to a demonstrable level in the defence and security realm. Okay, as time progresses, a lot of our competitions are going to be much more aligned to current procurement programs. So there'll be some changes to the requirements of our competitions, but hopefully we'll provide a more of an end-to-end process to get you from that initial idea through to hopefully into the hands of users directly. So some of our offerings that we have, we run, as I said, competitions. We have two main types of competition. The Open Call for Innovation, that's currently paused at the moment until the UKDI reaches full operating capability in July. But we're still running our themed competitions, which is where a government sponsor has a particular S&T need. These are run throughout the year. We typically run about 10 to 15 of those through the year. We also run Defence Technology Exploitation Programme, which currently is also paused whilst we work up the new DI organisation. So do keep an eye on that. And that's really to help small to medium enterprises work with a higher tier supplier who will be their route to market and to help them develop their business. We also offer a lot of post-funding support. So we have a team who provide advice and mentoring for small to medium enterprises in particular to help their businesses grow. We also support for the Defence Security Seed Fund, and we also run Defence Innovation Loans for the higher TRL innovations to provide some funding to help them get to market. That very briefly is a bit of an overview of some of the stuff that we do that you might interact with us for. There's other stuff that we do with other government departments as well, but I won't go into those today because we don't have time. So very quickly, that's who we are, that's what we do. If you're interested in anything, visit our website. There's a link there for contact us. And come and have drop an inquiry form in, and your local innovation partner will get in touch with you and start that conversation about where your technology might fit into one of our competitions. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. And now to our second speaker, who is Jane Warren. She joined the Royal Navy commercial team in March last year, leading the Define pre-sourcing team to align Navy capability needs with market realities to support war readiness, operational outcomes, and long-term sustainability. Specific areas of focus include supplier engagement, commercial strategy, and supporting the implementation of the Strategic Defence Review and industrial strategy outcomes. Over to you, Jane.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and recognise the integral role that the workboat sector bring that we will rely on to implement the Strategic Defence Review. As we've just said, I'm part of Navy Command, one of the procurement organisations within the Ministry of Defence. We don't purchase everything on behalf of Navy. There are delivery agents that facilitate some of that work. These include defence equipment and support, defence digital, the submarine delivery agents, and the frontline command arm, Air and Navy. The work that we do predominantly in the procurement team, Define procurement team, relates to the pre-sourcing activity and when we hand over to procurement. Just to put it into perspective, we have currently over 271 live contracts. We're currently engaged in 61 procurement activities, and our spend is significantly around 2.36 million as it stands today. So quite an enormous spend profile just within the Navy element of procurement. We actually procure anything from washing machines right up to could be drones, could be service review capability, and so really varied on what we do as a team. I've entered into Navy. Can we just move on to I'll just move on to the next slide if I can. Yeah, great, thank you. As I said, I've only recently joined the mod, coming from an NHS background, but joining a really exciting time. We all know, we see it on the news regularly around the unrest and the security of the nation, the risk of conflict. We've also hear about the changes in terms of mod from the Strategic Defence Review and what the long 10-year plan needs to be to become an agile hybrid Navy. In doing so, we need to increase the mass and resilience of our capability, and we need to change the way in what we've traditionally operated from transactional work into a more partnership approach to working with industry. Agile is really important to us as an organisation. For any of you that's been attended events over the last sort of 6 months where you've engaged with our new First Sea Lord, the First Sea Lord is really focused on having an agile organisation, reducing the bureaucracy, speeding up to maintain advantage, and embracing technical change. I think there's always been a challenge that we need to have rapid innovation. As I said, we're moving from a transactional organisation into an agile organisation, and we need to ensure that the regulations support us in being able to deliver that. If we can just move on to the next slide. So what can you do, and where are we at with industry, and how can they support the Royal Navy? So I think the most important thing to recognise is that the Strategic Defence Review does provide a clear demand signal. The focus within the Strategic Defence Part really demonstrates where the Navy needs to be in the future. So as an industry, you really need to understand what that direction of travel and to position yourself on that journey. There's a number of prioritised capabilities and portfolios that are being built up. With the Defence Investment Plan, which we're all waiting to hear, that again will give us clear direction on meeting our making our ambitions affordable, with a clear understanding that we need to demonstrate value and efficiency in everything that we do. So how do you partner with the Navy for those that aren't already engaged with us? So we do recognise that sometimes there can be challenges to engaging with MOD, some of those personal security clearances and other things. But it's really important that you are engaging with us at every possible opportunity. So engaging in any market industry engagements, whether that's from requests for information or concepts, so really getting to understand us as a customer, understanding our clear demand signal for Navy, that hybrid Navy of the future, understanding the innovation, so the industrial development and research that needs to be out there. We recognise that you are the leaders in that innovation at pace, and welcome the knowledge that you bring. We're looking at opportunities for shared risk and reward, and understand better our supply chains, and that's come through very much in the industrial strategy. And we're participating and continue to engage in regular war games supported by industry. So really, where are we at? So we're now looking at some of the changes in procurement pathways. Some of you may already be hearing of things around the SME pathway, the low complexity procurement pathways, looking at spiral, look at commercially off the shelf opportunities and be able to adapt. So a number of new commercial vehicles being tested and implemented. We're looking at speeding up those acquisition pipelines with Procurement Act 2023, obligations to have greater transparency and make opportunities more available to SMEs, and which brings us to the due regard to the national procurement policy. And I think from how industry would like to work is simplify contracting. Some of you have probably had some of our contracts and they're not simple. And so we're looking at abridged contracts, reducing some of the terms that need to be in there, and also having greater transparency of some of the frameworks and other appropriate commercial vehicles that we use. The last slide, I think there's one here. On the last slide, I've just got some signposting here for opportunities, so where you really should be focusing some of your efforts if you're not already, in making sure you're signed up to defence sourcing portals where our opportunities are advertised, linking in with some of the regional defence clusters, looking at the opportunities on contract finance and just really engaging, whether that's through some of our concept cards where your ideas are taken forward by our develop teams, but really looking at those opportunities to engage with MOD personnel. So that's a brief overview of where we are at Navy. Really exciting times, a lot of change happening, but as soon as we get that DIP published, there'll be clear signposting of our where we're going in terms of strategic focus. Thank you.
Thanks. We look forward to that. And just a reminder to everyone listening, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We'll come to them at the end of the presentations. Next up, we have Tim Kettenlock, who is Deputy Director of the Defence Office for Small Business Growth. Tim has led finance and digital transformation in the civil service, including in defence for the second permanent secretary, integrating digital solutions across operations, procurement, and platform availability. During the COVID-19 outbreak, he led the Midlands testing infrastructure and the UK COVID antibody testing programme, pioneering home testing and diagnostics. Tim.
A real privilege to be here today, and I've just taken over, so moved into the role of heading up the Office of Small Business Growth, and wanted to speak a bit about that, what's it aiming to do, and how it's going to work and function. So, Secretary of State and the Prime Minister on the 3rd of March 2025 stood up and said that defence needs to be better, it needs to be open for all, and we need to be better at enabling those who are new defence and those who are working with defence to contract and integrate into the supply chain. In September, the third quarter of the year, we published the DIS, so Defence Industrial Strategy, and that said we would create an Office of Small Business Growth, and that office would help increase the expenditure we're doing with small and medium businesses, and that's to increase expenditure by 2.5 billion by 2028. Between the launch of the DIS and the announcement from the PM and Secretary of State, there was some work done with small and medium businesses to say what are the problems that you're facing when you're dealing with defence. And these are knotty and complex problems, but not surprising to many people listening on the call. So it's difficult to get security clearance and go through that process. It's hard to navigate your way through defence. It's really complicated and it's slow. And our aim as a small business office is to try and tackle those problems and leverage after the good work that's been done. So between me arriving in November and where we are today, so around about 50 working days, we've been busy working on developing a website and contact centre. And this is delivering on the concept model, which is outlined for you in the slide above. And the contact centre will provide you with this one-stop shop for being able to engage with defence and being able to see what's going on with defence, particularly from a small and medium perspective. You'll be able to interact and be able to learn more about what defence is doing and the contracting it's doing, and then be able to get services through Shape, Advise and Grow to help small and medium businesses. So Shape is helping you work as a business to design yourself so you're aligned to working with how defence works. That's particularly if you're new into defence or you want to move into a new area of defence. Advise could be how we get through different things. If you're going through a security clearance process, or you're trying to navigate your way through terms and conditions or through a tendering process, how do you do that? And how can we give you a guide or hand-holding process through that? And growing is helping the small and medium businesses grow to back British industry and give a UK resilient supply chain. So that could be access to finance through venture capitalists. It could be access to manufacturing through our trade bodies. In parallel to those services that we're providing to SMEs, we're providing those services also to the MOD customers themselves. So as in people who work within defence who are struggling with contracting or speed of contracting. And we'll also be working in a Shape, in a direct and assure element, and that's looking at policy and looking at the legislation and how we can change those things to make sure that they work with small and medium businesses. At the end of January, the initial offering will be stood up, so we'll have this sort of flag in the sand, a marker, a show of intent, with a website being tested with 30 SMEs. Those 30 SMEs will test, trial and make sure that website is working before we allow all 12 million SMEs in the UK to have access to it and get the goodness that comes through it. As we go through the course of the 2026, we'll then be speaking about how we'll be pulling levers and changing and working with different parts of the organisation to help amplify the goodness, catalyse work that's already in flight, so that people can get after that 2.5 billion, and that'd be direct and indirect spend. So it'll also be working with down the supply chain with the tier 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 suppliers through the strategic primes as well. By the end of 2026 and moving into 27, we should have significantly moved things on, and the experience you get through the MOD should be different to the experience you have today. But what we want to do is create a trajectory of growth over that time period. So if you look at how much money there is available, the 2.5 billion, that looks a really large sum. But if we split it across the number of contracts MOD has, which is about 11,500 with SMEs, that's a small amount of money. So we'll also be driving forward growth, and that's trying to get a 5 to 15% growth year upon year for each company that's coming through the process. Hopefully, the combination of growth, a UK resilient supply chain, and an absolute value of tangible amounts being measured will give a reassurance that we're going in the right direction, but we're also building back better. We want to work with SMEs in doing that, so we'll be developing cohorts of people. We already have a small group that are working on the website design of 30, but as we go through different stages of security clearance, test and evaluation, etc., then we'll be reaching out to SMEs to come and help us get those products right before giving them to the wider community. And I'll pass back over to yourself now, Debbie.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I can see that we have a few questions coming into the chat box, so we'll come up to those at the end. So thank you very much, everyone, all our speakers. Now I'm going to hand over to Sharon Jones, who's going to moderate questions and the discussion. Brief intro to Sharon. She joined the Royal Navy's Maritime Enterprise Engagement Team in 2023, where she was tasked with extending activity from the Solent Maritime Enterprise Zone to national engagement. Named one of the Telegraph's top 50 women in engineering, that's returners and transferers, in 2018, Sharon is passionate about the opportunities of emerging technologies and the importance of leveraging these to solve problems. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you very much, Mark, Jane and Tim, for those overviews and getting us started here. So I'm going to bring together our questions and to facilitate that discussion. So we're going to start the first question for Tim and for Mark, which you will note now I've added an extra little part into. So we heard from Jane about the vibrancy of the workboat sector and how it helps the Royal Navy to fulfil their objectives. How can the commercial workboat sector collaborate with MOD more widely? And how does that link to those modernization goals that have been outlined in the Defence Industrial Strategy? So, Tim, if I come to you first.
Well, I think feeding back is the first really helpful thing to do. So we're trying to build something with the user in mind, testing with the users of the service, rather than building it for, which is our traditional approach of this works, and then people going, no, it doesn't. So using an agile approach, Jane spoke a lot about agile, and good friends with Gwyn, and we're fully on board with that kind of approach of doing things very small and quickly in iterative stages and testing whether it works. So I think our approach of doing that and then delivering a product and scaling it should help address those questions.
Thank you. And Mark?
So there's lots of opportunities to interact more closely with MOD, and we're predominantly talking about Navy in this instance. There are organisations such as regional defence and security clusters that companies and academia can join, which are there to be a group to support local businesses and academia to deliver and collaborate and deliver within the defence and security sectors. So they're going to be a really good opportunity. There's one based around the South Central region, which is Hampshire, Surrey and West Sussex, but regional defence and security clusters being established across the whole of the UK, including the devolved nations. So I would really strongly encourage any companies that are interested in engaging more closely with defence to get involved with your regional defence security clusters. They are now funded by UKDI, so they have a certain amount of funding to support the businesses and run events, and that's one mechanism. There are other collaborative options. There's the Battle Lab on the Dorset coast, which companies and innovators can participate in, get involved in, but run events to build that exposure to defence requirements and understand what the latest challenges are. But also, MOD publishes lots of competitions. Have a look at the Defence Sourcing Portal and the Contracts Finder, see what's being asked for, see what the latest hot topics are. That will give you directions to what's of particular interest. There's a lot published out there if you know where to look. So I would start those points and then build your network from there and collaborate, work with other companies in the area where you can to get your foot in the door effectively.
Thank you both. Tim, there's a sort of an amendment within the questions that we have there that are asking about how long it takes to become an approved or registered supplier. Can you help me here? Because my understanding is that anybody can look on the tool that Mark mentioned and was on Jane's slides, the Defence Sourcing Portal, and tender for the opportunities that are there. So there's no process for becoming an official supplier. Is that correct?
You're well outside my comfort zone here, Sharon. So I honestly don't know. Would be the answer.
I've got to be honest. I'm also it's a little bit outside because I'm not directly involved in the procurement aspects of it. I can only really speak from a UKDI perspective, and with UKDI, there is no pre-registration requirements. Any innovator can submit a proposal. The typical contracting time within a UKDI competition is about 3 months from the close of the competition. If you're selected for funding, then you can expect to be on contract about 3 months later, and that takes account for the time that it takes to run the full process. But there is no pre-qualification requirements as such. Your proposal needs to demonstrate that you have the capability to deliver, but that's really about it.
Sharon, do you like me to come in there just from a procurement perspective?
Yes, please, Jane.
So the mark is correct, and that in accordance with Procurement Act 2023 and our obligations to have non-discrimination, equal treatment, then we will set out what those minimum standards need to be. So a supplier does not need to be pre-vetted at that point in time. We will inform them the level of security that will be required as part of that project and programme, and then we'd also look to, as part of that onboarding, and engage that into the implementation and mobilisation one. But we will set out the level of security clearance that will be required for that particular product, good or service that will be required. It will all be in the ITT tender documentations. No pre-vetting required. Obviously, some of the work in partnership working and developing capability, there may not be a contract in place, and so we need to consider some of those security clearance in that pre-sourcing or that design space, and that will be resolved. That can be resolved by having that sponsor within MOD to support some of that security clearance requirements.
Thank you, Jane. That's really helpful. And you've brought to mind two things that I'm aware of. One is referring back to the regional defence and security clusters that were part of Mark's answer. They are growing across the 4 nations, and those are definitely places you can find those partners, so the MOD sponsors or the larger tier 1 prime organisations, but also those collaborative networks are supporting people to understand the security requirements and can help sponsor getting security clearance and work through. So that's a key area. I'm sure that as Tim's service develops, that navigating the security clearance part will be a part of the services that they are exploring. In fact, I think I spotted it on his slide there. So Coming through to the next question that we've prepared at this point in time. We've spoken a little bit about existing products, but for me, the real excitement, particularly that I've gained through attending Seawork as a show and hoping to meet some people this summer as well, is the way that the sector can help drive innovation, particularly when we're starting to look now towards autonomous systems and sustainable technologies, both of which are going to be needed to meet the future needs of defence. So I'm going to bring this question to Jane and Mark, and again, starting with Mark. What can the workboat sector do in supporting our innovation?
Engage with us. Let us know. So UKDI, our remit is expanding now that DASA and FCI have merged together along with DIU. Have a chat with us in the first instance. If you've got an idea that you think is pushing the technological bounds, we might be interested in it. Have a chat with us. Even if your proposal might not necessarily be a direct fit for one of our competitions, we can always have a discussion about where you might want to go next, what other options might be available to you. UKDI is not the only game in town when it comes to innovation. There are lots of parts of MOD that are funding innovation in all sorts of area. And of course, there's NATO Diana as well, so the NATO equivalent of UKDI. So have a chat with us, because if we can raise the profile of certain technologies, we try to. And with an informed customer of the Navy, if the Navy knows what the state of the art is, then that can help shape their future requirements. But they can't ask for something if they don't know it exists. So we need to know. So engage with us. Have a chat.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Can I bring that question across to Jane also?
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. So I think from working with some of our develop teams and also digital, you're correct. We don't always have the answers. We have a problem statement, and we need industry to help us solve that problem statement. And I think there's an awful lot of technologies that you're able to do on a smaller scale. We can't start putting things onto our boats without things being tried and tested. So it's actually having that evidence in some of those technology spaces, the testing and the readiness for us to be able to adopt those technologies. So how do you get that out there? How do we know that's available? So there's a few things that you can do. Is one that, as Mark's always referred to, is the engagement. So occasionally we'll put things out around requests for information. So we're thinking of doing this, and we want your ideas. Everything is commercial, but they're in responding to them. Even if you're part of that supply chain that can do it, can open up that dialogue and encourage you to meet with the other partnerships in that industry. I think it's really important to attend some of these trade fairs and have those conversations, face-to-face conversations. There's an awful lot of military people, whether it's DPRT, whether it's DSI, whether it's Oceanology, whether it's Seaworks. There's a lot. I think it's being really clear on that innovation. We're not just talking about autonomous vehicle vessels, but we're talking about the whole infrastructure that supports those autonomous vessels. So being really clear on how you can engage with partners. So if somebody, now this shows me that I'm not very technical, if somebody's doing something like fuel or batteries, or you start partnering and build up those ecosystems yourself, we can do part of that for you and encourage it, but we can't do it all. So it's building up those ecosystems, engaging with them regional clusters and networks, because they will offer opportunities in there. And I think the main thing that I'm seeing more now is we can't wait for perfect in the mod. Technology moves on so fast. It has to be good enough now. So it has to be the commercially off the shelf, good enough, and then we add the bells and whistles to it through spiral development. And so being understand how that you can be agile in your product, your service, or working with others through that engagement, it will be pivotal in having those opportunities with in mod. So just to really reiterate, engagement is key. Pick up anything. Finally, the last part, under the Procurement Act, there was an obligation around transparency. So we are publishing across the whole of MUD our preliminary market engagement, our pipeline notices. So anything over 2 million that we're going to anticipate being procured in the next 18 months. I might have got that wrong, 2 years, 18 months, I believe. That will be published. We're getting more sophisticated in getting that detail to publish those opportunities, even if they don't come to fruition. That will allow you to start looking at those partnerships where the opportunities are. We'll also do a lot more around preliminary market engagement as an obligation on PA, but getting the value out of the market. And finally, a lot more around transparency. So our contracts will be published, and so you can see the direction of travel. So a whole host of different mediums to get involved with MOD, but the principle is engage, know what our demand signal is, know the direction of travel, and see how you fit into that with whether that's as a collaborative or as a single organisation, and know the primes.
Thank you, Jane and Mark. Just linking or following up from that, we have a question in from the audience, which is asking specifically about what the MOD is looking for. We'd framed that last discussion point, particularly around autonomous platforms and systems and the whole infrastructure that enables that to work. And we'll know that that's related currently to Atlantic Net and Atlantic Bastion, which are current MOD procurements which are in flight, and new innovators are very welcome to join us within those. We'd also mentioned sustainability, because we're aware that the climate is changing. That affects how platforms and vessels operate. It also affects the resourcing of fuels and the infrastructure for that. Jane, are there any other areas that you would like to highlight in terms of MOD? I'm not sure if I may have lost Jane just for a moment. No, I can see you now, Jane.
Can you see me? In terms of capability, then the direction of travel is very much the hybrid navy and increasing the mass and resilience of that hybrid navy. But then there's some of the other things as an agile organisation that we need to be thinking around in terms of our people and training and how we and the leadership and how we support in those areas to bring the right people into the MOD on there. I think some of the work that's happening at the moment through the DIP, so balancing ambition with the affordability, is key. And as part of that will require a number of prioritizations across capabilities. So I think once that, I mean, we were expecting it to be published, weren't we, at end of 2025, and we're still not quite there on 2026. I know at Treasury an awful lot of conversations happening. But I can't be I can't even say it, specific in that space. Technology, AI being one of those key drivers at the moment. We're hearing it as a panacea to everything, but the autonomous and under and over water defence. Nuclear, as we know, strategic defence review, nuclear is a high priority. Obviously that not necessarily affecting this environment, but yes, the hybrid is the autonomous, which is the Navy of the future, and as doing that, make the Navy more affordable but more efficient.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I really appreciate you picking up the question around the Defence Investment Plan. I would agree that all of us have been waiting for quite a long time for it. And we do understand the pressure to get the books balanced and to be able to prioritise across the whole of defence where the spend happens and how it helps build capability for everybody for the future. Mark, can I just come back to you in terms of what's being looked for? I believe that there's a themed call open at the moment for sensors and sensor technology. Are you able to tell us about any others that are open?
Yes, so we've got an open call. It's a themed competition. A call out for autonomous sensor management. All the details for that are on our website. There's probably a little bit too much detail to go in this forum, so I'll just direct you, have a look at our website, have a look at the autonomous sensor management competition document. But I'll tell you everything you need to know. If you're interested and you've got any more questions, get in touch with your local innovation partner through our contact form on our website, and they can talk you through any requirements and discuss your ideas on how you might manage that. In terms of other competitions that are in our pipeline, we do keep a list of those. Obviously, until they launch, there's no guarantee that necessarily they will run on time, because anything could happen and change in that time. Obviously, we're waiting for the publication of some key documents at the moment. But do keep an eye out for those. They'll also be announced on our mailing list. So if you're not signed up to our mailing list, sign up and you'll get a notification for when new competitions are launched as and when. In terms of other requirements, UKDI works across the whole of defence and security, so we've got a much broader remit. We're interested in obviously all the requirements that the Navy has, but as well as land and air as well. So come and have a look if there's anything in that domain that you think that your technology might be applicable to as well.
Thank you, really appreciate it. Just before I go to the next question that we've prepared together, there's also a question about regulation in the questions raised from our audience. And in maritime, that has twin areas like air. So we have the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, who oversee a lot of regulation, and the audience will be absolutely engaged with and understanding of how long it takes to go through those regulatory processes, although we're seeing Workboat 3 is helping move things forward at the moment. Aligned with that, we have a defence maritime regulator. I'm hoping that I may persuade them to come and join us at Seawork in June this year. And I am aware that because of the specific requirements of defence, that we've been able to help the MCA move forwards, and Defence Maritime Regulator has actually pushed the boundaries a little bit in terms of those autonomous platforms and the ways in which they're operated. So that there will be benefits to that to use and pick up. So we hope we can bring you in connecting with them in June, or I'm happy for people to reach out to me before then. So I'm going to put our last question that we've had a little bit of pre-discussion around to Tim and to Jane, which is all about the messaging of the defence industrial strategy in terms of how the commercial workboat industry can contribute to strengthening the defence supply chain and support regional economic growth, and again, create those jobs. So if I can come to Tim first for the overview and perhaps the SMEs in particular.
Yeah, I think we've recognised that, and Mark's touched upon that sort of regional approach that we've already taken, sponsoring. So we need to, I think, bring those things together so that we can make sure we amplify the goodness of what's going on in local areas and replicate that where it's applicable across the UK. So what I'm hoping to do is take on some of the issues that are being faced. So by bringing those small groups of SMEs together and say, what are these issues you're facing? Are these to do with geography? Are they to do with the sector you're in? Are they to do with how you're coming into defence, so if you're new or existing, and then try and unpick those issues. So if you take an example around security clearance, at the moment we've got, so an individual hasn't got security clearance, so they can't access what we need them to supply. So they either have to sit under a prime to get sponsored or sponsored another way. So can we create a way of doing it that allows people access to see what our demand signal is? And I'm in the foothills of this problem, but it's trying to work with SMEs to say, well, how can we fix that problem? And does this solution create another problem, or does it actually solve it? So I've got loads of ideas, but it's trying to make sure that we can actually do those, and within the timescale that the 18 months we've got to be able to deliver it. So I'll go back to the beginning of trying to make sure that we base things around those regions, but also making sure that we're speaking with people and saying, are those solutions scratching the itch you've got, rather than we think this has solved the problem. Does that help, Sharon?
I think so. Thank you for your transparency, and you've highlighted particularly some of the things that I think both MOD and businesses of all sizes have found quite challenging, which is, defence has gone through a significant period of reform. Jane's referred to the ways in which procurement legislation has been changed. All of the indicators are that this is going to make it better for doing business, and that things will happen more quickly and we can pull that technology through. However, there is a challenge with ensuring that the budget is in place, and we know that that is something that's being discussed by people more important than us at this point in time. And we have certainly learnt that engagement and touch points to exchange ideas and raise awareness are really important in keeping us together. So, I will echo what you've said, Tim, in terms of organisations engaging with Office for Small Business Growth when they're able to, and providing you with honest feedback, which might be tough for us at times, but that's the only way that we're going to change things. And it's great to know that appetite and some resource to make those changes is in place. I'm going to come across to Jane just to come back again. We want to strengthen the UK's defence supply chain. Have you any particular suggestions there, Jane, in how we can help that, and how the commercial workboat sector can?
I think it's thinking broader. So UK industry should look at how they can potentially get private investment, so that they can invest in their own capability and then lead on to mod at pace. I think there's also opportunity to engage with academia, so that they can develop from what was initial prototypes into greater capability at scale. So that will support some of that supply chain engagement. They will also have networks. I think when you're bidding for opportunities, many of you will be aware that there is a requirement to include criteria about social value. And certainly as part of that social value, how we can work to encourage work training apprenticeships as part of those supply chains that will ultimately increase your performance in your submissions. So there's opportunity wider than just the immediate supply chains. I think it's really, really important as well to understand your supply chains as well, because they are developing at equal pace, and we'll still need to drive innovation and value for money as part of those supply chains. And just knowing them, there's a lot more emphasis because of some of the challenges around Ukraine that we had, is really understanding what those supply chains are and that supply chain risk. So to have a greater understanding of your supply chains, what them supply chain risks are look at those mitigations, and look at what your plan Bs are as well. So yeah, and I would just be saying, from a procurement person, really emphasising that as part of your social value submissions in any opportunity, whether it's with a prime, whether it's with UKDI, or whether it's with MOD, and any of those delivery agents, really explaining the value you bring as part of those supply chains.
Thank you, Jane. So I'm going to invite our panelists to take a moment to have a look at the questions that have been fed through. And I'm going to ask each of you to close with an answer to a question that's there in the chat, hoping that you don't all choose the same one. And then I'm going to be really cheeky, because I'm going to pick up, there's a great, I think it's a statement rather than a question, about all of the data collection that happens on vessels and platforms in the commercial workboat sector already. So I'm really grateful to the person that had put that in as a question. And it's asking about that data that comes from Fish Finder and your locations and everything else. And is there anything in that that could be used? Absolutely. Atlantic Net, which is being stood up at the moment, is the first time that the Navy has run a project which is commercially owned and commercially operated with naval oversight. And that is all about gathering data and aggregating it to better inform about what is where around our coastline. And that will start to inform what we procure going forwards with future projects that link into the hybrid Navy. And I will find and share with our Seawork hosts a little bit more information about that for the attendees who are interested with that. So having said that, Mark, I suspect that you've chosen the question up near the top, or I'm hoping you have, so I'm going to come to you next. Thank you for your participation.
No problem. So actually, I was having a look at the regulatory requirements and compliance ones. So in all of these tenders, you should be given access to relevant regulations that you need to comply with. So actually, what I was going to say was that a lot of people might not be aware that there's a large test and evaluation program running across MOD at the moment, and they're looking at how future advantage through test and evaluation can be conducted better. So they want to know how we can reduce the time it takes to test and meet regulatory requirements. They're interested in everything, really are. So if you've got ideas of how that process can be accelerated or improved in any way, it'd be worth getting in contact with them. They've got a webpage on the government website. Get in touch with them, have a chat, and see whether you can get some funding to develop your idea, because the MOD recognises that at the moment, achieving regulatory compliance is time consuming and it's taking too long. And how can we get that faster? So have a look. Sorry, Sharon, I didn't choose the one you wanted. My apologies.
Well, that's I didn't direct you, and it's great to have that answer and that signpost, because you've made me aware of an open competition I wasn't aware of at the moment. Thank you, Mark, for your support and your contribution. Tim, I'm going to come to you next.
I'm going to take Guy's question. I think that's a really helpful one. So I think we need to just acknowledge where we are as defence, that we're not good at giving a strong demand signal, which is funded. So we need to get better at that. So there's three things which are on the horizon. So the first is early market engagement. There's a process which is being drawn together, how we do that better. So we should hopefully do that later on in the year, so probably the end of the first quarter. And that's trying to translate that technological push and pull into a coherent kind of way of which we're working. There's the SME action plan, which I'm hoping to launch at DPRTE with Minister Pollard and Rupert Pearson-Nad. And that's telling go back to those levers. How do we get after that 2.5 billion? How do we get sustainable growth? So it'd be talking about those levers and how my team will be going after those levers and working with SMEs. And then there's the commercial pathways, which is already available, of saying how we got existing compliance and regulations that are there, and that'll be published on the website. They're saying how we can use existing things, so we don't need to change things. What we need to do is maybe be slightly braver, but we also need to just work within the guidance. And I think by publicly saying this, people can then say, but there is a way of doing it. There is a way of working with you. So hopefully that's a really helpful document to expand our current offering.
Thank you. Those are great signposts. Tim, we are so privileged to have had you join us so early on in your time heading up the office, but also almost before the office has actually been launched with your initial cohort at the moment. For our audience, I'm just going to translate DPRTE. So that is a commercial show which is hosted in Farnborough. It's towards the end of March, and it's defence procurement, research, technology and exports. So some of us will see you there if you choose to join us there, but their website's certainly useful to have a look around and get some of those signposts as well. So I think I've just got enough time, Jane, to come to you, and I hope you found one that you wanted to close us off with.
Well, the funny one that I wanted to answer was the question: will the DIP ever be published? So I think it will, and it is frustrating because it is the direction of travel. But I know there's been HMRT Treasury conversations. There's some big prioritisation that needs to be played out as part of that. I anticipate towards the end of quarter the end of quarter 4, quarter 1, we will see something, some signposts there around what the DIP needs to look like. Somebody else had asked a question around, oh, sorry, my phone's going. Someone else had asked a question around all workboats and yachts and typical like fish finders, microphones. Interestingly, I was approached around a capability to review data, and we work with, is it UKHO? And they pull from a whole provider base all that data together to simulate it into meaningful data that can be used by MOD and other areas. So we are working with organisations around data that we can be used across all marine industry. And I just look if there's any other pertinent point. Somebody asked a question, is UK defence ecosystem open to European entities in the same industry? Yes, it is. They can design their own supply chains. That's not for us to look at those supply chains, but they will need to be vetted and need to understand that. So I hope I've answered a couple of them. If there's anyone that I've missed, Sharon, you just want me to pick up?
No, thank you. Thank you, Jane. I'm just so indebted to our 3 panelists today for being so open, for being willing to be put on the spot and ask my random translations of people's questions in the chat there. And I'm now going to hand back to Debbie to close off. Thank you.
Thanks very much. What an interesting webinar. Thank you so much to all of you, to Sharon for moderating, to our 3 speakers, and of course to you for listening in. And I think there were 2 messages coming out of that, lots of messages, but 2 main ones. One is there's a lot of opportunity there for the workboat sector, but the other is to make the most of that opportunity, you need to engage and approach. As Mark said earlier on, the MOD can't want what it doesn't know exists. And the rate at which technologies like autonomy are innovating so quickly is such that this could easily be the case, that there's stuff out there that could well be taken on board very quickly. So approach and engage could be huge opportunities. If you missed any of the webinar or would like to hear it again, a recording will be available on our website in the next few days. So thank you very much again. And our next Seawork Insights webinar will look at marine civils, and that's going to be held on March the 19th. See you then.